Hello, Vanakkam, and welcome to Sudarshan's podcast. I'm Sudarshan, the host. Today I have Himanshu Ai, who is the co-founder of AI Palette. AI Palette recently got acquired by Global Data. And congrats, Himanshu.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity and looking forward to a conversation.
Yep. So, how do you feel about the acquisition?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say 11. Definitely be feeling very positive about it. It's a great news, not only for the ecosystem, but personally for the AI palette as a journey. And it's always good to have a closure to the entrepreneur journey and getting acquired by a large, big brand and working under the umbrella of that. I mean, I'm super excited and looking forward to the possibilities.
Cool. Nice. Yep. For listeners' context, let's start from your story. Then we'll talk about AI Palette,
Yeah.
what it does.
Yeah.
Maybe let's quickly to help listeners. AI Palette is a company. They help FMCG brands to, inform them or like, help them to plan what to do next or do it right. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll talk about Himanshu first. Then we'll come to the AI Palette side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talking about me personally, I'm a Pahadi boy. I was
Pahadi as in?
Yeah, so Pahadi means I'm a mountain
Nice.
guy. So I was born and brought up in the Himalayan region,
Okay.
in the state of Uttarakhand. So I did my all schooling and spent a large part of my childhood actually in the Uttarakhand. And again, I come from a family which primarily has been in the army. So, for example, my grandfather, my uncle, and my father himself have served in the army. And I am one of the few generations who have actually gone into the engineering from the army. But again, it's been a great change. I think both my brother and myself were the early engineers from our generation and explored that particular path. So just to give you a context, I did my schooling, everything from the Uttarakhand, a place called Pithoragarh, which is again a very small town. It's near India, Nepal, China border in that sort of a territory. So I did all of my schooling there. Then I was able to get into the IIT Guwahati. Again, primarily because of my love for the mathematics and engineering. So this happened in 2011. Again, my life has always been something which is about taking the road less traveled. So even if I talk about the first part, which is taking engineering firstly from a family coming from army, that was a road less traveled. Similarly, even choosing the IIT Guwahati over the other IITs that I was getting at that point of time, which were IIT Delhi and IIT Roorkee, which is very close to to my place. I ended up taking the IIT Guwahati at that point of time. Again, a road less traveled.
Why is that?
So I'll tell you, which is the third part, which is where essentially I ended up taking mathematics and computing as a branch.
No.
So for example, I was getting a different branch in IIT Roorkee and in IIT Delhi, but I ended up taking mathematics and computing because at that point of time, while we were still in the information age, but those were the early years.
Yeah.
But you will see the potential part of it, right? And mathematics is something which has always been very fascinating for me as a subject, and I just wanted to explore, right? So I ended up taking the mathematics and computing in IIT Guwahati. This was again back in 2011. I studied there. I did my bachelor's, did it for 4 years before landing my first job in Bangalore, which was at Visa Data Labs. So Visa Data Labs, again, just to give you a context, prior to 2018, Visa did not have any India presence. Their tech offices were in Singapore and in Silicon Valley, in California. So it was the first time they actually established a tech office in India, and Bangalore is the location they chose, and we were one of the few early employees, you can say, in that sense of the parlance. And we got a fantastic opportunity. It was more like a startup journey, a very entrepreneur journey. It was like 0 to 1 to 100, and you could really see the growth. Just to give you a context, when I joined, we only had one couple of floors in a big building, and by the time I left, I think there were multiple floors that we had occupied. So
Right.
people and teams and lot of stuff.
You've seen a 0 to 1 in a corporate.
Yeah, exactly. It was 0 to 1 in a corporate, and then even 1 to 100 for that matter, right? Because there was so much scaling that was going on. Again, as part of the Visa Data Labs, my primary responsibilities were software engineering and also working on the data science aspects of it. So I would primarily build the systems that would help in prediction of the different payment related trends, and at the same time would enable the millions of transactions that happen through the Visa payment system for that matter, right? So all of that was a great learning. Again, I was able to interact with the big data in the truest sense. These were petabyte scale data that we are talking, and not just like GBs of file. And you will really see the power of
Petabytes.
petabytes. Yeah.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's like a
What's the scale of
yeah. So after that we have the petabytes, which comes up, right? So it's like a 10 to the power again, multiples,
Right.
right? So being able to work on such a huge scale and being able to work on the predictive problems on top of that data, I think that really got me excited about the possibilities that you can achieve with AI. And just to add one more tidbit into this particular aspect, by virtue of being in Bangalore, one of the common things that I would especially do is go to the networking event, go attend the different AI events and whatnot. And one common theme I saw in every AI event, and this was again pre 2018, was that every AI event would only have primarily fintech startups, right? There were very few, you can say, vertical AI startups, and that also actually got me wondering and thinking that why are other industries not adopting AI, or rather thinking that it is only a matter of time that they will, right? And that is actually a segue into the AI palette journey, which of course we'll talk about. But you can see how the dots started to connect when I obviously look at retrospectively.
Okay, when I was talking to Ankur, ZenDuty founder, your listeners might see in the previous episode.
Yeah.
He also said the same. Innovation come from two places, either finance or defense.
Yes.
Like from what you said, and also you've been in a place, Visa.
Yeah.
And what made you switch from payment to totally a different place like FMCG?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that your co-founder or what made you take the call?
Yeah. So again, I mean, you call it serendipity, but it was also being at the right place at the right time. So post 2018, in 2018 actually, I quit my job and joined this program called Entrepreneur First. It's a deep tech accelerator program which brings together people from different domains. So think of it like YC, but then which allows the matching of the co-founders. So I ended up joining this program in Singapore. Again, the best part about the program is it will bring together people from completely different domains, right? And that's how they feel that deep tech startups can actually start, because you are bringing people from complementary skill sets. Now, when I joined the program, there were people from multiple domains, right? From fintech to manufacturing to banking and whatnot. I ended up stumbling with my current co-founder, which is Som Subragan Chaudhary. He actually comes from a background in the food industry, and just to give you a context, the kind of company that he worked for. So he worked for this Swiss company called Givaudan. And if you walk into any supermarket today, whether it is in India, whether it is in China, Europe, or US for that matter, two out of the three product will have a Givaudan flavor of fragrance. So they are huge in the B2B market. They actually provide the ingredients, the flavor, and the other aspects, which then the CPG manufacturers or the CPG companies use for ultimately their products. So whether it is a Pepsi, whether it is Coca-Cola, all of them are actually having that ingredient which is actually getting sourced from these companies. And they are huge in that aspect. So again, that's
You
more
met
of
him
a yeah. So I met him at the program in Singapore, and again I got very excited about discussing about the food in general and what all it takes for, let's say, that particular packet of chips that you're having, or that particular coffee can that you're drinking, right? And what are the processes, right, from the genesis when you start thinking about the idea, and then start brainstorming on it, actually bring it to life, to actually having it in the supermarket, right? So all of that journey, I could really visualize it and understand it, and I could see the power of couple of things. One was that firstly there was a huge amount of data points, right? And I mean, right from the genesis to the distribution, there were multiple data that were getting collected.
So you learned all of this from your co-founder.
From my co-founder, right? That there is huge amount of data which is getting it in this entire cycle. So they call it like product lifecycle management, product lifecycle, which is again starting from multiple stages. The second thing which I could see is it's a broken process in a way that it is very manual and has not been and has not changed for almost 100 plus years, right? So whatever the process, market research process, which is there today, was the same process which was actually happening in 80s and 70s, and there have not been much transformation. While there have been obviously some incremental changes,
Okay.
but it has not transformed like a lot.
Right.
And we started visualizing a world where, let's say, AI could do all of this, right? And that's how the hypothesis was, that how can AI help in reducing the time period which is involved in this particular aspect, and how can we go from the product discovery to the product launch in shortest time possible, and how can AI make that happen, right? So these were some of the hypotheses that we started with, and then again, like, as a sort of part of that process, we spoke with multiple customers across the globe, and finalized on the AI pilot as a potential area to work upon.
Nice, nice. Okay, I just want to double click on what happened during the program. I think you met your co-founder there.
Yeah.
You might have met many other interesting people.
Yeah.
What made you pick this? That is one question.
Yeah.
And okay, let's talk about the program first.
Yeah.
I've been seeing this because haven't spoke about in the podcast.
Yeah.
Is that only for deep tech startups, or I think it's agnostic, industry agnostic,
Got it.
or how it's
Got it. Let me answer the second part first. So, Entrepreneur First, it's actually heavily focused on the deep tech part of it.
Okay.
So, primarily, it's about the AI, the blockchain, the biotech, the medical, and all sorts of that. And it's primarily heavily on that. While there are definitely programs which are also outside of that, which are very sector agnostic. And I mean, if I have to take names like Antler, for example, they are again having a presence in India. There's Iterative. It's again based out of Singapore. Although they do focus a bit on the deep tech as well, because they are focusing on the robotics and the other aspect, but they are still okay. I mean, they don't go into the deep tech as much as Entrepreneur First focuses on. And then YC, of course, is primarily about the scale part of it. Yeah. So these are some of the programs.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. The first question is who else you met and why did you pick?
Yes. So I did meet like a lot of interesting people. Again, the natural tendency was to go into the comfort zone. So I definitely met with people from the banking. I met people from the finance side of it. So I'll also tell you, like, one of the couple of interesting discussion or the ideas that we were having at that point of time, right? So one of the big problem which happened in 2018, and this was personally felt by me, was when I moved to Singapore. I had to literally, like, either rely upon cash, or I had to rely upon some forex cards
Okay.
in order to make any payments, right? Because I did not have a bank account there, right? And it was a big pain point, because relying on cash, I would be actually in the middle of a particular transaction, and then the limit would finish, and I would call my guy back in India and ask him to, recharge the forex card, right? It was a big pain point. And at that point of time, Paytm was already in India, and there was this QRization of India, starting to happen.
That was a very nascent.
Yeah, very nascent stages, right? And we started thinking about that, what could happen if we had like a wallet which could work across geographies, right? Something like which can work across borders, and you could actually make the payments, let's say in INR, but then in Singapore, or when you are in Europe for that matter, right? So sort of like a wallet without the borders.
Okay.
But again, there were multiple regulatory challenges once we started getting into the details and the devil lies in the detail. So once we got into it, we realized, okay, this is going to be very, very tough.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I did not pursue that idea much. And then the second, the second idea which we then stumbled upon was actually the AI palette, which was with the current co-founder, with Som. Again, the reason why I got excited about the idea was couple of things. Firstly, the data itself, right? I'm a big fan of data. I love crunching and deriving insights out of the data in the first place. So that gives me a lot of high, and I seriously enjoy that particular process. So that was one. The second was there were a lot of similarities on the problems that I had worked in the fintech domain and what I could apply to the food tech domain. For example, we were building prediction models that would identify the different payment trends, and you could apply the similar learnings on the food data to understand what are the trending ingredients that are going to be there, or what are the kind of food trends that will be there in the future, right? So all of that also excited me from a AI point of view, that how I can apply the NLP, how I can apply the computer vision, and all of this was back when you did not have LLMs, or rather you had the LLMs, but in its very nascent stage. You had the BERT, for example, which was by Google, and again, one of those very early LLMs is what you can call it, or rather a SLM for that matter. And slowly over a period of time, of course, the technology also evolved, and we also transferred. and transform the tech stack, from those models. But these were the couple of things which really excited me: the presence of the data and the model, the AI application part of it. Right? So,
Yep. So it may be kind of for non-tech listeners, words like NLP, uh, yep, all those things might be a little too much for you, but I'll come to I'll try to break things down, right? Um, okay, if I ask you this question, where if I'm a top FMCG brand and I want to introduce a cold coffee in Bangalore,
Yeah.
how AI Pilot will
Yeah.
help me?
Yeah. So before I answer that, let me tell you how it happens today, which is in a manual stage, and then how AI really, sort of
Yeah.
turbocharges this entire process, right? So assume you are a Nescafe brand manager, sitting out in South,
One of their accounts. Okay.
who is sitting out in, let's say, South India, and you want to launch a new coffee innovation, right? Now, the first thing that you would do is you will start the discovery of the product or the idea for that matter, right? So you would typically conduct a market research. You would invite people. You would do focus group study, and you would employ agencies like Nielsen and Kantar, and you would typically have a representative sample to whom you will be asking some questions. For example, there will be people, you will ask them what kind of coffee you drink, what time you drink, and all of that, right? So there will be a list of questionnaire, and you will keep on asking this multiple times to multiple people, and finally arrive at certain hypothesis. That is one way. Second way will be you will maybe have your team visit some of the cafes, trending cafes which are there in Bangalore and or South India for that matter, and you will try to triangulate what is really trending. For example, maybe pumpkin spice latte is becoming very popular,
Oh,
right?
really?
For
Okay.
example, I'm just giving
Okay.
example, right? Or let's say maybe dark chocolate filter coffee is becoming very popular, right? So you will try to identify all of these nuances and these trends. So now you will have couple of hypotheses. You will have some data. Again, you can understand the sample part of it. It's again sampled from a very small data set. Now, based on that, you will have some hypothesis. You will start working on product formats and concepts. So concepts can be something which is similar to how you would look on Amazon or Flipkart for that matter. You will have a packaging design and then you will have a description about the product, right? So you will do all of that again with a creative agency. You will outsource this either to a creative agency or you might do it internally with a team. So you will now have some concepts. Now assume you will have 5 to 10 such concepts. Then you will again invite the people, again have sort of a screening and ask them to choose which is the best product out of this, right? Maybe they will rank it 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever, right? Out of that exercise, maybe you identify that dark chocolate filter coffee is the best product to launch, right? And then finally you arrive on that, and after that, of course, there will be the GTM strategy and how do you launch that in the market, what will be the sales strategy, the price point, and all those other aspects you will consider and then launch into the market, right? So this is the typical process, traditional way, right? Now how, and by the way, there's one more thread here which is about how the trends really origin, right? For example, how the trends origin, and this is again an industry secret which I'm telling you and your viewers, which is that trends, that the creative people in the FMCG industry, they are not the CPG brands or the FMCG brands, sorry. FMCG and CPG, by the way, are same, right? Consumer packaged goods and
Fast moving
consumer
goods and
is
consumer
consumer
packaged
packaged
goods.
goods. Correct. So they are. So that's why I'm interchangeably using them. So yeah, sorry, we're talking about the inspiration part of it, right? So the CPG brands are not the real innovators in the food industry. The real innovators are chefs, baristas, and bartenders. They are the real creative people who will come out with a new dish or a new variant. And typically, what happens when something becomes big in, let's say, the fine dining or the restaurant space, then it gets popularized in the city, in the fine dining and the restaurant space of that particular area. Right, salted egg yolk. This was one of the very popular trends in Singapore, which started from a very small cafe, and then it spread to like multiple cafes within the Singapore. And so this is the first part. Then what happens once it becomes very very popular? You will have QSRs. QSRs are the quick service restaurant. Again, you the likes of KFC, McDonald's, and Starbucks. So then they will adopt it. And then when it becomes big there, then finally you will have the CPG brand. So who will copy what is happening at that stage? So this is how the trends typically flow.
Right.
Now, what AI Palette is really trying to do is we are trying to identify those early signals at the restaurant and the fine dining space, which the CPG companies can take a bet on.
Right.
Right. So that's one way in which we are sort of improving the process. and helping in shortening the time cycle which is needed
For the
for the innovation. The second way in which we are going after this entire process is we are looking at huge amount of data, not only the data that they had previously, but also the digital footprint of the consumers. For example, when you and I go today and let's say if we are having coffee at a Starbucks and if we are posting on, let's say, social media, or if you are posting any reviews on Amazon or Flipkart for that matter, right? Or for example, there are some new menus which are coming off of different restaurants, right? So all of that actually form a digital footprint, which is a new digital information that's available today. And trust me, this information is available in millions and millions of data points, which cannot be which cannot be considered negligible, right? For example, if you are working and launching a product for a country like India or China, you are typically having a billion plus population, and you will typically be launching a product for millions of population.
Right.
So you really need the insights, unfiltered insights from the millions of data points. And that's where the AI pilot is really helping. We are looking at millions of these data points, again, from the company and from our side, from what is happening on social media and the others. And again, we have different data partners that we leverage. So once we get all of that raw, unstructured data, we run our own proprietary models to finally identify the different signals and insights. And once we identify those signals, we don't stop there. We have a generative AI which will help you in generating the product concepts. You can visualize the packaging. You can visualize how the description will look like. What are the claims of the product? For example, if the same product, the dark chocolate filter coffee, if you want to launch it in Christmas, or if you want to launch it in Diwali, then how it will look like, right? How the packaging will look like. So all of that we are able to help our end users visualize. And finally, we also have our own proprietary and patented algorithm which they can use for ranking of the concepts. Let's say you generate 20 or 30 different concepts on our platform. You can identify which are the top 5, again, depending on the multiple needs. So we are actually helping in cutting down of this entire time cycle, which previously used to take months and years for that matter, down to weeks. That is one value. The second value is we are looking at multiple data points. We are talking about millions of data points rather than 100 people in a room. And the third important point is these are also unbiased results. We try to also ensure that the results that we are getting are not getting any heavily biased because of the data, which can always happen in a sample when you are looking at only 100 people because you are paying those people to give their views. Right. So these are the ways in which we are able to sort of optimize and make this process much, much better and much, much faster, which otherwise becomes very, very difficult in a traditional way.
Okay. To sum up, unbiased
Insights.
insights will come, and also here traditionally the sample size is very small.
Yeah.
But when they use AI pilot, the sample size is huge enough. Right. So you were mentioning data points, and you collect these. You have data partners to provide them.
Yeah.
And how are you sure that those points are very reliable, right?
Yeah.
Because these brands, when they launch something, that will be in a very big scale. I imagine. At least they invest a good enough chunk of money into it, right? How are you sure about the reliability of those data information?
Yeah. So, a couple of ways, right? Firstly, how we are doing it, and I will go into the pre, during, and post collection of what are the different mechanisms that we have which ensure that the noise does not happen. Because at the end of the day, we are looking at millions of data points.
Yeah.
And for every AI model, the data in is data out, right? So if you're feeding in the garbage, the results will be garbage.
Garbage.
So how do you ensure that the results are actually accurate and insightful? And I will also give you a couple of examples of how we solve that problem for a couple of markets, right? But firstly, let's talk about the pre part of it. So the way in which we solve the problem for the pre part is by having a targeted data collection, again powered by the domain insights. What I mean by that is, today, for example, if I ask you to collect data of, let's say, beverages, right? Now you would again look at multiple social media, you might look at retail, e-commerce and multiple other data sets, and you will liaise with a partner. However, instead of that, let's say if I give you a very targeted data, input, I ask you, give me the data only for, let's say, filter coffee, or let's say coffee for that matter. And this coffee data should be taken from, let's say, these different cities. Now I'm making it very, very targeted, right? And these insights actually come from the domain experts because they understand what are the different levels of the food. For example, beverage is one level, but within beverage you will have coffee.
Yeah.
Within coffee you will also have the tea,
Yeah.
energy drink, and other aspects, right? So they provide you this taxonomy or the hierarchy, which you are then able to leverage when you're collecting the data. So that sort of reduces the noise.
Okay.
For example, when you are looking at a very broad net, then there are chances of the false positives getting introduced in the data. But if you make it very targeted, then you are only collecting the specific data and it will reduce the false positives. So that is the pre-collection. Then comes the during collection, right? Once you have actually collected the data, then what do you do, right? So again, we have multiple data cleaning, which happens through AI as well as through the humans part of it. So when I say AI and the human, what we have built is a taxonomy, which again, is related to the first point which I was mentioning, right? So the way in which we look at a taxonomy is we identify, firstly, which are the different, the trends which are actually associated with this particular data for that matter, right? So for example, we would identify the different ingredients, we would identify the different product format, and all of that is coming from the knowledge base that we have built, and this is again happening over a long period of time, right? On the AI side of it, we have a multi-model AI which will look at the images, text, and emoji combined to identify the signals. And I'll give a very, very relevant example on this. So what happened in the Thailand market when we were initially entering that market and processing the data from that market? We started seeing that a lot of our data was actually giving insights on pet food and pet related data, right? Which got us very curious, right? Hey, what's happening? I mean, why are we getting data related to pets, right? I mean, we were getting results around the dogs, cats, etc., which made us feel, hey, are we doing something wrong? So then we started going into the into the nuances, into the data part of it. And what we identified was that in Thailand, people actually name their pets after the food a lot. For example, you could identify, there would be a cat named Pepsi or Cola.
Okay.
Similarly, you would have a dog named Cookie, right? Which would be which would be very difficult to grasp if you're just looking at the text. Because they would typically write, I love my cookie, I love my cola, right? Now, how do you differentiate as as a AI model, right? And that's where the power of multi-model comes, because we started combining not just the text but also the images signals. And we could see in the image there would be a picture of a cat or a dog, right? And that's how the multi-model then started filtering out all of those pet-related data as well. And the final output also obviously started becoming better for the end customers that we had, right? So this obviously helped a lot. Similarly, if I talk about the emoji, so emoji again is a very important use case, especially for the younger generation, which is Gen Z. Because what will happen is they will not even mention anything. They will just give a coffee emoticon and then heart, right? That's it.
I can, relate a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a good foodie. I would
Yeah.
say. Whenever I go out, I just take a snap and put it in my Instagram,
Exactly.
saying, if that is tiramisu, good. If the food is not nice,
Exactly.
that's it.
Right?
That's
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And that is what we could actually see in the data, right? When we did not have the emoji capability, we could see we are losing out on a lot of information because they just image and then that's it. People are not even putting anything, or sometimes they would put some hashtags. And emoji actually made it even more powerful, because using emoji, decoding the emoji, you could understand, are they talking about positively? Like the same thing, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down, heart for that matter, or there's a emoji emoticon which is about vomiting, right? So you could start understanding all of these signals from the data, and that also helped us a lot in sort of taking care of these false and irrelevant data for that matter. Right? So that's the second part. And then the third part is post the collection, right? That's where we have the human in the loop. So it's not like completely everything is AI. We still have the human in the loop. Again, they look at a sample of the data, and there's a process known as RLHF, which are reinforcement learning using human feedback, right? So essentially, they look at the output of the data and they provide whether it is correct or not, whether the model has classified this data correctly or not. Like, for example, if it is a food, non-food, whether it is a coffee. So all of that feedback, one is the AI which is providing the feedback, but then having a human to check whether the AI actually is doing it correctly or not, it gives the fine tuning as well, and makes the model even better, right? Because then it gets more of the training data and it knows where it is making mistakes and where it is not making mistakes. So these are the different steps that we employ across the pre, during, and post collection to ensure that the false positives are actually getting reduced,
Got it.
and the customers are actually seeing a lot of relevant data, which also ensures that the analytics that they get out of this millions of data makes sense.
Very close to the reality.
Reality, correct.
Got it. Got it. What do you say, right? It seems like you have access to a lot of data outside.
Yeah.
But how do I call AI Parrot? Is that a SaaS tool or is that a data tool to predict my thing?
Yeah.
Because SaaS is, I would say, a software, right?
Yeah.
You do whatever you want. But here you have a data backing it.
Yeah.
So here I feel AI Parrot is a software and also backed by data. Do I have to call it SaaS or something else?
Yeah, got it. So we are, I mean, the category that you would typically put AI Palette would be the AI SaaS. Now, obviously, data is powering all of the, the different decisions at the end of the day. But these decisions are exposed to the customer as features, right? To give you an example, we have a feature called pairing. So pairing, the way it works is it would look at the strength of the different ingredients and how closely they appear in, let's say, different dishes. For example, if a strawberry and blueberry people are consuming together, or let's take the classic example, right? Biryani and cola, for that matter. Like people love pairing and mixing those two, right? Now, if you look at the strength of pairing of the two, if both of them are appearing and co-located in multiple conversations, multiple menus, recipes, e-commerce, they will start appearing together and the strength of pairing will be very, very high. Now, we are giving all of this data to the user. They have a feature they can go to. They can select the trends or the ingredients on which they are wanting to understand the pairing strength, and they can actually look at what is the strength of pairing, right? So it's still an interface which is powering the insights coming out of the data, but we have made it in a way that these are all frameworks which they have already been either they are aware of or they have already been using. There's another one known as white space opportunity. White space opportunity, you can think of it in a way that we identify which of the trends actually have a high demand but low supply, right?
Okay.
Which are there's huge demand, people are asking for it, but you don't have enough competition products which are serving that niche.
Right.
For example, if people today want let's say filter coffee as a canned coffee, but you can see a lot of conversations happening, but there are not enough brands which are catering to that, then there's a white space opportunity. If I launch something tomorrow, there's a possibility of that working.
Right.
And so these are the different signals we are giving to the data. At the end of the day, the decision is something they have to make. We are not making the decision. Although with the agentic AI, we want to get to that as well. That's a future course of development that we are working on. But today, the way in which customers use the data is it's a user experience where they would come to the AI SaaS tool, they would go through the multiple AI features and filter through the data and finally get to the result that they want. The ultimate decision will still lie on that human who is going through the data.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the way in which you can visualize our product.
Got it. Right. Okay. Now you are helping all the CPG, FMCG brands, right?
Yeah.
I believe the data partners you are partnered with now might be having access to multiple other industries and things also, right?
Yeah.
They might help you to design next best furniture or watch.
Yeah.
What's the next thing coming up in
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And just to give you a context, very recently we have also explored and moved into a couple of new verticals. So I'll talk about the two which are very, very interesting.
Okay.
The first one is the pet care. Now again, pet care is becoming hugely popular, and
very
especially if you look around in the areas like Koramangala and even HSR for that matter, you can start seeing these pet saloons, right? And you will actually see these are even better and more grand than compared to the human saloons for that matter, right? And people spurge a lot of money on the pet food and pet care as a economy, and it's growing in the double digits when it comes to the CAGR growth and whatnot. So we are definitely looking at that as one of the opportunity areas, and also working with a couple of customers in this particular regard related to the pet food and the pet care part of it. And I'll also give a one very small tidbit which again sort of blew me away. That Mars, I don't know if you know this company called Mars. They are primarily known for chocolates.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
They are the largest producer of the pet food, and this I never knew.
Okay.
And their 50% of their revenue actually comes from pet care, pet food.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are they based?
So they are, I believe, a US headquartered only.
Okay.
Yeah, but they, of course, they have multiple
Right.
entities across the globe. And this was again very interesting for me because I always thought of them as this chocolate company, and then I realized, oh, they are so huge in food and whatnot, right? In pet food. for that.
Now I can't unsee that. Whenever I see
Yeah,
mask,
exactly.
okay, food, not
It's not food, yeah, not mine.
okay.
Right, so yeah, so that's one. The second one that we are going after, nutraceuticals. Now again, this is also becoming very very interesting because of the shift that's happening towards the health as a whole, and also because people don't have time, right? And consuming nutraceuticals is an easier way in the busy schedule of our lives, right?
Is that like supplement types
Supplement
or
type, correct.
okay?
So for example, today, if I ask you, like, which method would you choose for the vitamin D? One is sit in the sunlight for 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day every single morning, or take this vitamin D capsule. You will go for,
Yeah.
mostly go for the second option, right? So that is what we are also seeing, and this is hugely becoming popular. This was already popular in the US, but we are seeing now this is starting to happen in India and some of the other emerging economies as well. A lot of D2C brands are also now trying to come into this. Right, so we see this also as one of the opportunity areas, and that's the reason we are also, like, trying to expand into this vertical. And many of the big CPG brands, like, be it Nestle, Kellogg's, and whatnot, they are also trying to get into these opportunity areas.
Got
So
it.
these are a couple of at least the new verticals that we are getting into. And then of course within the food and beauty and personal care, there is, like, a lot of development that will happen.
Interesting.
So this is more at a vertical expansion. The other primary thing which will happen is or more at a geography expansion. So today we already provide coverage of the data from 27 different geographies, which covers 50% of the world's GDP. Okay,
No.
but there is still huge amount of countries that we don't capture today, right? I mean, there are almost 195 plus countries in the world. We are only in, like, 30 of these, 27 of these, right? And there is huge amount of countries that we can cover. So the idea is also to for AI Pilot to be a global brand in the truest sense, where we are working and we are as synonymous as Google when it comes to launching a new product or identifying a new trend opportunity
Okay.
and building that legacy.
Got it. Fine. Yeah, 27 regions, countries now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that, right? Um, what are those two, three region countries that gives you the most
Yeah,
revenue now?
yeah. So Americas and EMEA, they constitute almost like
Okay. Slightly move towards yeah.
yeah. So Americas and EMEA, they give us almost 70% of the revenue that we get today. APAC is still at the 30%. And if I talk about maybe 3 years back, this was opposite. We had APAC actually contributing to 70%, and then we had the EMEA and the Americas at a very lower level because of also the reason we started a GTM from APAC because of being based in Singapore and India for that matter.
Okay.
But over the period, we realized that of course US and Europe are the
Post the program, you stayed in Singapore for a
yeah.
while.
So I was there for almost 5 years, and then I shifted back to India in 2023.
Okay, got it. So what about the Indian region? Is that part of your market or like very tiny
Yeah,
part of
it's a tiny part of the market. We do have customers in India, but again, these are large enterprise customers that we also have in other regions.
Right.
So, for example, let's say we are working with Diageo. They are the world's largest alcoholic beverage company. I mean, you would know them from the brands like Guinness, Johnny Walker, Smirnoff. So they own all of that. Very huge market cap, almost $66 billion of market cap that they have. And we are working with them across almost 15 plus geographies, again, ranging from the Asia to the Europe to the US
Right.
and Latin America and Africa as well, for that matter. And again, we are working with them in India as well, right?
Right.
So, a lot of these multinational companies, because they are stretched across multiple geographies and multiple regions, it becomes easier to get into India as well via the partnership.
Okay, initially you started your GTM in the
Yeah.
APAC region. Then you focus more on EMEA and
Yeah.
North America, right?
Yes.
Right. We'll talk about it now. So I think your team size would be around 120 if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so the 120 will be including all the interns and the contractors, but otherwise it would be, if you talk about the time when we started the GTM, it was around 60.
Oh,
Yeah, out of
60.
which 30 were primarily focused, the 50% were focused on the tech, and the remaining 30 were focused on the GTM. Again, the multiple aspects like sales and marketing, customer success, and all of that.
Right, got it. So we'll kind of break it, right?
Yeah.
What are the channels which worked
Hmm.
in each region, right? Or maybe in general we'll
Okay.
talk.
Okay. So let me talk about the one which we initially started and that has continued to work, which is the founder evangelization,
Okay.
right? And I think
Doing it here.
yeah, we're doing it here as well, right? And it's very powerful, right? Because think about it. At the end of the day, we humans love to hear other humans' stories. We relate to humans more than the company for that matter.
Yeah.
And especially when you're in the early stages, you won't have much to show rather than your only other than your story, right? And I think at that point of time, my co-founder, who obviously came from the CPG background, and me, we were very passionate. So we would try to crash every conference that we could in Singapore, or try to be there at the right places at the right time when it comes to the different events and any sort of congregation or gathering that would happen, and we would pitch our story, right? So that would be one, and the second one,
You join events as a speaker, sir.
either as a speaker, or also sometimes we would just go into as a listener, but then we would network outside of the event for that matter,
Right.
right? So that would be one. The second one would be, of course, social media. LinkedIn is again a very powerful connector in that aspect. So we would keep on either writing about the CPG, the challenges, or write about our own journey for that matter, right? Because people appreciate and they really relate to it. How you're growing as a small company, how you're fundraising and everything, right? And they also start relating to your story a lot more. So this was something which worked really well for us, especially during the early years. We were able to get a lot of customers either through direct evangelization or maybe through a word of mouth where somebody else would refer us. So that was one.
Okay, you mind sharing the revenue numbers?
So revenue numbers I might not be able to share, but I can talk about maybe till what number of customers.
Right.
So, and again, these are enterprise customers, so take it with a with a different benchmark.
Got it.
So at least for the first 5 customers, for
You
that matter,
were
we
full on
both were-
events
yeah,
going on.
correct.
What about the
Other
other
things,
thing?
yeah. So once you start seeing, at least for the, and when I say these 5 customers, again, these were across multiple regions. So we started, at least getting a sense of the APAC as a whole and what are the things which are working and not working. And we quickly realized that thought leadership is going to be very, very important for them. Now, again, the thought leadership, why it is important? Because it establishes you as a category leader. Secondly, it establishes credibility because they know that, hey, you are really creating a great content around it. Now, this content can be in form of white papers, content can be in form of even webinars for that matter.
True.
So you essentially, we started positioning ourselves as the AI company for the CPG industry, right? That we are the ones who can solve. And again, at that point of time, you also have to understand that there were very few companies that were doing this. While we had some competition in US and Europe, in Asia we were practically the first.
Right.
So there were not many companies that we were competing with, and we inherently started becoming like this AI company, go-to company for the CPG industry, especially for this when I talk about the product innovation part, right? Not the other cases which are there. So that definitely played a big role. I think we have seen, especially the webinars, we have seen good amount of conversion happening. Again, one of the primary reason that happens is because on webinars we are doing a lot of user education.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but can we break that? Okay, initially you said okay, until 5 customers. Now the things are scaled.
Yeah.
I don't think from founder side the things are different. Maybe I know, like maybe if you take that as a pie chart, right?
Yeah.
If you break that down from founders and your friends, and
Yeah.
in that, if I take that as channel, I know that may attribute to low, maybe 5-10%. What about your sales and other
Okay.
your GTM teams? How are they contributing?
Got it.
How events are working? How
Got it.
paid
Got
ads
it.
are
Yeah.
working?
Okay. Okay. So events definitely contributes.
A number to it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. So I'll again give you a ballpark number. Don't want to give any exact number, but you can consider events to be around 35%, 35 to 40%. Again, the primary reason of the event is because if you look at which is the offline place where the customers are meeting,
Right.
that's events are the one of the likely places where they congregate in multiple numbers for that matter, right? Because they don't the CPG people or the CPG professionals that we're targeting or going after, they won't typically be attending any of the SMB related events. These would typically be very enterprise led, very enterprise heavy events. So this would be one of the channels that we would definitely leverage. The third one would be the direct sales. Again, we had a SDR motion running in and getting the leads. So it's the entire funnel, right?
Right.
Going from the SDR and then followed by the discovery. Outbound lead. Again, the channels that we would leverage would be LinkedIn. This would be the some of the advertisement also, or the webinar for that matter. Out of all the three, the highest ROI we have seen is on the webinar. right? And also there's one more thing that we would do in the webinar. We would typically do a trends report, which would happen every year. For example, there would be a trends 2025, which would be what are the trends that are going to come in the 2025 year. Similarly, we would do a trends 2024 webinar. And a lot of leads we would get from there, because people were always excited ki, what are these guys predicting? Let's try to understand, right? I mean, what are they talking about? So we would definitely get a lot more leads there. One thing which has not worked well for us, and which I am also open to talk about, which is the paid ads. Right? Now the paid ads, the reason, and I can also tell you the reason why they have not worked, right? Because they are very transactional in nature. And sometimes what happens, a lot of these users, especially the enterprise one, they need some sort of hand holding, some sort of education about the product, and what exactly we are solving and what can we solve for them. So they need some sort of hand holding there, which cannot happen if you're just bombarding them with ads and doing that. So the ads unfortunately has not worked too much well for us. Webinars, and then thought leadership, of course, has been one of the direct contributors, and then of course the direct sales, where we are reaching.
Right, right. And yeah, we didn't talk about the decision makers in all the FFCGs, right?
Okay.
Because I believe that from where I've seen, right? I've seen people who are like above 40. And I don't know how are they ready to adapt something in tech and something like AI,
Yeah.
right? How are you convincing them? Let's talk about who are they. Then we'll talk about how are you.
Yeah, so our ICPs are primarily, it would be either the insights manager, marketing manager, or R&D manager. Again, the name would vary depending on the organization to organization, but these would be a typical three set of users. R&D manager, marketing manager, and all of them would roll up into the marketing as a division, right? Consumer insights and marketing as a division. So the decision maker most of the time will be the VP or a CXO level person, or a director for that matter.
Decision maker to build the product or they buy
approve the budget. Approve the budget. But the users will always be manager or the people who are at the ground level, doing the R&D and the research and innovation and all of that. Right. So these would be typically either the insights manager for that matter, or an insights professional. So all of those would be using the product directly. They would be the users, but the purchasing power will always lie with the director or the VP or the higher level for that matter.
Okay, VP in a FMCG brand, maybe okay, even if I divide that into different regions, I believe those people would be somewhere like very old.
Yeah, they are.
And of course, you have to, and all these enterprise companies go through at least a bit of some legal and complaints, right? Checks.
That's correct.
How it happens.
So, I'll talk about how we have been able to sell and get through it, right? So I'll tell you, getting the first customer is always the hardest. And I think one of the key learnings for me, at least through the entrepreneur journey, has been finding those early adopters, right? You speak to 100 people, maybe 90 or 95 of them will say no, but there will still be those 5 experimental people who will just want to see what is it and what is not, right? And I think we were lucky to find those early adopters who were willing to try out the imperfect product and give us the feedback, the genuine feedback which was needed to improve the product, right? And Diageo was, by the way, was one of the early adopters, early customers of us, and we obviously worked with them out of the Singapore, Asia market, and then expanded to the multiple region. Similarly, we had a couple of other early adopters as well. So that is a one important learning, that you have to find those early adopters, because not everyone will be very willing to start. But once you get these early adopters, then the rest falls into place, because it's a FOMO, right? And this industry drives a lot on the FOMO. Once you start working with, let's say, Pepsi, Coca-Cola will want to understand and at least try to explore what they can work with you and what are the kind of opportunities it can open up for them. So that is one thing we have definitely seen happen a lot, that once we started working and name dropping some of these customers that we worked with, the sales becomes relatively easier. And also one of the reason why we actually went after the top of the funnel, right? I mean, when I say the top of the funnel, but what I mean is we went after the top enterprises and not the SMBs is because once you know Nestle is using our product, then tomorrow if we want to run the SMB GTM motion, it becomes easier because if Nestle is using, then all the new D2C brands will also start using.
Yeah.
But it will not happen the vice versa.
Right.
If a small brand is using, then Nestle will still have us go through the entire process. So that was also one of the strategic decisions of going after the right
It happened when you
in
started
Singapore
in
itself.
Good. Awesome. Awesome. Right. Okay. Now we'll quickly talk about the acquisition, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, happy for that.
Yeah.
I want to know what is your role in global data?
Yeah.
In a bigger corp, how are you planning to? I mean,
Yeah.
focus only on AI palette, or you're gonna take responsibility
Got
on
it. Got it. Yeah.
globally?
So in the shorter term, the responsibilities will be primarily focusing on the AI palette only, and we'll continue to drive the AI palette to the different revenue growth and the different product roadmap that we have envisioned out. One of the great things which has happened out of this particular acquisition is we continue to keep the brand name and the brand identity of AI Palette. So the AI Palette logo will continue to be there,
Okay.
and will be AI Palette, a company of global data. And the product will continue to be sold to the customers under the AI Palette brand name, right? So the work still remains the same. It's just that it comes under a larger umbrella,
Right.
and of course, it gives us more stability and more credibility as well, right? Because global data is such a trusted brand,
Yeah.
and they have been there in the market and the business for almost such a long time, and customers know them,
Yeah.
right? So that credibility gets added, and at the same time, my role will continue to be driving the technological innovations, driving the roadmap, the product roadmap that we had. Again, this is more for the shorter term part of it. In the longer term, of course, there are plans on how do we integrate the AI palette product with the global data largest suite of portfolio, and then how do we go about, how do I personally get involved in the other global data initiatives.
Right.
But that's something which we are looking more as a longer term. For the shorter term, I will continue to focus on the AI palette.
For next 1 2 years, you'll be focusing more on AI
Yes.
palette. Awesome. Yep. With that, well, I think one thing I knew, like when we started doing this, right? You said you used to
Yeah.
read a lot of books. Just want to, because I haven't asked this question in the recent times.
Yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
favorite
Yeah.
books?
So there are just for the sake of the entrepreneurship, I'll focus on that as a
Go ahead.
genre, and primarily the non-fiction part of it. So there are three. The Zero to One. That's one of the books, early books, which got me into the entrepreneurship and got me really excited. The second one would be The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Again, a very interesting book, and especially if you are a first-time entrepreneur or first-time founder, you should definitely read it. A lot of scenarios which will help you in the decision making. And the third one would be Shoe Dog. It's a autobiography by Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike. Again, an exciting book. It makes you understand the pains that the Nike has gone through in order to become a global brand today.
Got it.
And especially in entrepreneurship, you always face these challenges. And today, it's easy to raise money, but once you go through the journey of Phil Knight, you will know how difficult it was and how difficult venture capital used to be during those days. So it keeps you grounded as well once you go through that journey and you start relating to your own set of challenges.
Awesome. Yep. Because as a foodie, I want to bring in one more thing
Yeah.
to the podcast.
Yeah.
So you've been Bangalore.
Almost-
You've been Bangalore for almost
Yeah.
10 years, right?
Yeah,
Between you
almost
and
10 years. Yeah.
10 years. So what are your favorite food
Yeah.
places here?
So, I mean, without shame, it's masala dosa by Filter Coffee. So Filter
Oh, Filter Coffee,
yeah,
okay.
Filter Coffee, which is also a brand and a restaurant chain. So I really love their Kormangala Flip Flop. That's correct. Yeah. So I really and there's another one at Kalyan Nagar, if I
Yeah, it
remember
is.
correctly. So Kormangala Flip Flop, that's one of my favorites. It's always a Sunday meal that happens for me. The other one which I really like is Nasi and Me. I don't know if you have tried that.
Yeah.
So it's again a fusion food of the Southeast Asian food cuisines and Japanese also for that matter. In an Indian style, I mean, they obviously bring in a fusion of the Indian style. And I think it also gives me some sort of nostalgic memories about Singapore because when I was there, obviously I was exposed to a lot more of this. Now here, of course, Nasi and Me is a good way to escape into Singapore.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're going
Yeah,
to
I'm just
Singapore,
going.
So you like planning to
Will
move
not
there
move.
or
I'll be here in Bangalore only. But again, this one, the Singapore, the upcoming visit is more of a personal one, to be honest.
got it.
But yeah, of course, I keep on visiting there because we do have customers that are based out of there. My co-founder is again based out of there as well. So yeah.
Yep. With that, we'll wrap this episode. Thank you so much for your
Thank you so
time,
much.
Himanshu. Yep.
Thank you.
And we are going to Bangalore Brewing Company after this. It's a treat from Himanshu
Yeah,
for
thank you.
that.
Thank you so much, man.